even after realization, you can say the whole entire journey is all about refining the view, right? All you have is the view, the ultimate view of quote unquote no view. But it's really easy to verify that no view into another view. You can even verify emptiness into another thing, right? That's why I said about anatta realization, people like make that into a thing, right? So even after realization, you still need to continue to refine the very subtle layers of the mind that is still trying to verify this ultimate view into some kind of identity, whether that's, oh, everything is spontaneous, that I can just do whatever I want in spiritual bypass, or oh, I have to continue to dissolve the rest of my conditioning. Even that's a view, right? So if you hold the view that I have to completely dissolve all my conditioning and every speck of my ego, then you're gonna go into this endless cycle of cash to the tooth out I was talking about. Because everything you do is still coming from that view. You cannot solve a problem using the same conditioning that you're using to find a solution with.
Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again. And today we have another special guest with us. We have popular YouTuber Frank Yang on the show. Now, he is a fitness enthusiast, artist, and meditation coach. Yeah, he's become very philosophical. He's been on YouTube for a long time, but he started off, like you said, with a lot of like weightlifting stuff, it seems. But I'm really interested to hear what he says because he is a powerful philosopher, in my opinion. I'm really interested in where he's gone with spirituality, and this is a spiritual channel, so I'm excited for this one. All right, guys, won't keep you waiting. Let's get into it. All right, Frank Yang, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Where to begin? I know it was a little bit just to kind of like, we had to jump through some loopholes to finally make this work.
Oh, yeah.
But it's okay. We're glad to have you. I think on one of the occasions you said you were kind of at a meditation boot camp.
Yep.
Maybe we could start there. Meditation boot camp. What is that? What were you doing there? And let us know.
Yeah, it's a 90-day boot camp. Me and my business partner started our company called Contemplative CrossFit, CC. The name came about because I was into fitness, as you guys know, right?
Yeah,
But then as that extended, my own journey extended from fitness to art and then meditation. And then non-duality, enlightenment, the whole journey. And then I realized that I've just been kind of the guy who would just connect dots from different fields. So to me, it's not just art, right? To me, art is meditation. Meditation is fitness. The fitness is philosophy. So it's all like interconnected. So I took that mindset into the contemplative journey, and then I realized that all the practices I've been doing, they all connect, right? But then I was involved in so many different kind of practices, and not even just the spiritual practices have so many different nodes, but that particular node, that particular web that I call spirituality is also independently connected with fitness, with art, right? So CrossFit came about.
wow.
That's the name of the art company. And then we did this for like maybe 4 years where we just host like group calls. Initially, I was just doing one-on-ones. And then I started doing group calls with my business partner, Khan. He reached out to me and then we started a group. So we did that for 4 years and then we met this really mysterious teacher. Um, like he doesn't like to be public. You can't even find him online. So I'm not gonna like talk about him too directly because I don't know how much he wants me to reveal. But yeah, all I can say is he's some next level shit. He's some next level shit.
Oh, we're gonna get right into it because that's so spooky. Because
Yeah, it
today
is spooky.
at that psychic fair we went to, I like gave somebody an ear beating, yammering on, which I do, and I was saying to them, "What if we're only getting the compromised versions of these awakened masters? Like they're needed.
Oh, there you go. That's it.
I think I went too far. Like the conversation, things were flowing, and when I got into that, it petered out. But I was thinking a lot lately because there's people who I value, like Gangaji and Adyashanti and Angelo, and even though stuff I was watching about you is you know some profound things, man, and Leo Gura. But I was saying anybody that's in the public eye is got to have a kind of like there's a difference, it seems, from all those people and someone like Neem Crowley Baba, who was like seemed to be secretive, like don't tell people about me, you know what I mean, like you stumbled upon this. What is that distinct marker? Are they And so it led to this conclusion that I had that what if the versions we're getting, as useful as they are and as
It's
helpful
still
to the
convention. It's still confined to a particular convention. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear about it.
yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
from your point of view, can you talk
that
about
is true.
that? Not this guy particular, but
Yep.
your thoughts on the hermetic secretive master that like no barely nobody knows about. You got to climb a
Yeah,
mountain to get to them.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. So, I'll continue with my personal experience with the bootcamp and see how that relates to it. So, in the bootcamp, I'm receiving a lot of those teachings aren't really secretive. It's just that we just don't know about it because we just don't know where to look.
Okay.
And a lot of us don't aren't even equipped with the fitness, the mental fitness to even be able to receive some of those teachings, right?
Okay.
Or transmissions. I have a book right here. I want to show you. This is one of the books that we're reading. It's called A Luminous Heart. Like you're not gonna find this at the bookstore or the spirituality section,
Okay. Yeah.
right? You're just not gonna find it because it's just you're just not gonna find it. Is that you're not gonna find this next to the Power of Now for sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, or even Osho,
Yeah.
or even Daniel Ingram's mastering the core teaching of the Buddha. I don't know if you know who Daniel Ingram is, but he's one of my biggest inspirations when comes to awakening. Um, so my point is that it's not like those teachings are secretive. It's just that they're just not within our own convention. Like I said earlier, everything that we can find is still within the convention that we're looking from, right?
Yeah. Are they giving you transmissions when you're in their presence? Like are they do they have some kind of a presence to them that what is significant can't be verbalized or something?
Yeah, well, actually, the teaching we're receiving right now is just Buddha Dharma, but it's just like a particular, not a particular, but the secular version of Buddha Dharma is actually a very tiny slither of what the entire spectrum of Buddha Dharma. It's been
Okay.
filtered by the modern convention. Okay, this is we are able to commoditize these kind of particular strain of the Buddha Dharma in the modern world, and that's the only thing we're gonna get. But I mean, you can find things on the internet, but you just aren't able to interpret it because you don't have the context for it, right?
So their interpretations are unique and profound in a way that you don't find contemporarily.
I haven't found it in contemporary circles so far. Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to hear about that. Tell me something that you're learning
yeah, yeah.
that wouldn't be conventional.
Well, first of all, let me just tell you the sort of the setup of this boot camp.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
basically, every morning, um, our coach, we call ourselves contemplative athletes. So our coach, like I'm one of the assistant coaches. So our main coach would give the main transmission at 7 a.m. through Zoom. And all 35 of us would just tune in and then receive the transmission. And he would give a Dharma talk slash guided meditation along with the transmission. There are some phases of silence for an hour to an hour and a half, followed by a discussion for an hour to an hour and a half. And then I redirect the transmission at 7 p.m. I just play his video of his transmission. Yeah, at 7 p.m. I host that discussion, and me and my business partner host the first discussion. Yeah. And then at 2 a.m., my business was host another discussion and another transmission. He would like, I guess, redirect that transmission by playing the video at 2 a.m. in the morning, our time, but then it's 2 p.m. in Eastern Asia time, and also in Europe. I don't know what time in Europe, but there's three times, but it's the same transmission. But that transmission was given with that in mind, so it's atemporal, which means that you can play the transmission at 7 p.m. and still receive the same effect, so to speak. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And then the whole experience is really outside of any conventions that you can imagine. I would say I would even venture to describe it almost like a performance art or like an art installation slash like David Lynch film slash of course Buddha Dharma. There's the usual like emptiness is form from his emptiness, things
Yeah.
like that. That's there too, sure. There's a whole thing about understanding the nature of compounding phenomenons, understanding the five aggregates, understanding the different routings to cut through the illusion of the self, purify obscurations, the jhanas, form and formless jhanas, absorptions and samadhis, all that stuff is still also in there. but then it's being packaged in a way where I've just never experienced anywhere else. The whole thing feels like a TV show almost. The 3 months, and then the people that it's almost like the show Lost, right? The people like we spend time with together
Yeah.
become like your closest friends, like not beyond close. We established this thing called the Samaya, where it's just like we just synced up like closer than close.
So
And
it's not a silent retreat. You can
it-
talk at this thing.
it's not a silent retreat, but a good portion of the transmission of the meditation is silent. But then the discussion, obviously, well, we would just talk and we just go on the rest of the day, and then at 7 p.m. we do it again. But the thing is, and you can decide to join however many sessions you want. You're required to join one. But some people join 3 sessions, which means that they spend about, including the discussion, they spend about 7 hours a day doing this. So you can literally make it into a retreat if you want. And for me personally, since I have to host one of the calls and I have to be on the also on the live one, I'm doing like probably like 6 hours a day, like 5 to 6 hours a day, just hosting calls and doing the meditation. On top of that, we have book club meetings where we learn how to read yogically, which means like those books cannot be read conceptually. Like if you try to read this with the mind, yeah, I mean that's one way to make sense of it as an entry point. But then in order to fully comprehend this kind of stuff, um, you really have to kind of, I call it reading with your third eye. You have to read non-conceptually.
Absorb it
You have to
like
absorb it. It almost feels like,
osmosis.
yeah, it almost feels like an absorption. It's a yogic training in and of itself. So we have that book club meeting twice a week. We also have our own podcast, which is actually online. You guys can check it out. It's the Contemplative CrossFit YouTube channel. We actually have 5 or 6 videos that we just kind of like do every week in order to kind of recap what we're doing in the boot camp. Yeah, and it also feels like a little bit like a TV show, like Lost or a reality TV show. Sometimes people stuff come up. There's like internal dramas where people are just laundering their karmas. But at the end of the boot camp, everyone just like feels super close. And there's people that dropped off and people like, who like, was like all of a sudden having breakthroughs and like people
It's
that
so crazy
never
that you
have
said that
down.
you mentioned Lost, because when you were talking about it being like an art installation,
Yeah.
I was imagining like a dramatic aspect of it where sometimes you'll see in a show where it's like a hidden institute in the forest where they're combining science and
Yeah. It feels a little bit like that.
spirituality, and so it's like on a retro TV, like welcome to the institute,
Yeah, yeah, it
and
feels a little bit like that. Yeah, and then
which is cool.
we have to cross certain chasms and stuff like that, which is just the crossing over the what your mind assumed to be the known reality and what's beyond, that's called crossing a chasm.
Yeah.
Which is not like on a spiritual path. You cross the chasm many, many times, right? Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting to hear you to talk about your engagement in this, because anybody that's been following you in recent times no, probably is aware of like your spiritual journey and how far you've come. Like I was watching something before we started this, an interview, I think it was like with a German guy or something, or a Swedish guy or something. You were on his show, and the way you were talking was like somebody with like a deep awakening already. Like I was like eager to come ask you some questions about mind with a capital M. And
Yep.
to hear that you're participating in these practices, is I'll just be honest with you, it might come off a little ignorant, but from my point of view, it's like I would have thought you were kind of past the point of engaging in practice.
Mm.
But maybe that's not a thing. Maybe it's you can practice no matter what state you're at or something like that. Maybe
Of
you could
course.
talk about
Yeah. Yeah.
non-duality and
Yep.
the eternal mind, being aware of that,
Mm.
not no more localized ego, like I don't
Yep.
feel like I'm here and it's the world, I'm kind of blended up in with it, it's all one thing,
Yep.
versus practice and somebody practicing from a place where they don't have that understanding. Maybe you could like talk about that stuff.
Yeah, there is a switch that I flipped in 2020 that is still there. But then there's more refinements to go. That's why we call it the refinement of the view. Also, there are powers and cities that you can develop. I'm not trying to develop powers and cities, but there are different means in which you can develop through practice, different capacities you can develop. Um, yeah, they're such as mind reading or even, multidimensional traveling, which is something that even just a year ago, I probably wouldn't care about. Like I did not believe it or believe it. I just didn't care about them. I still don't actually, because my state right now is just perfect the way it is. But then there's just further to go. in terms of
Right.
you can actually be in a place where you feel like there's nothing more to do while still at the same time continue to develop. Actually, that's the perfect place to continue to develop, actually. Yeah, even Kenneth Folk, he was one of the teachers that I like really respected from the pragmatic Dharma circle. Um, he said that even after fourth path, from like the pragmatic Dharma's map of awakening, which is considered to be the end, the fourth path model. He said after fourth path, people continue to develop. Some people develop without practicing. Some people have very specific practices. He said that to compare the your practitioners' development after fourth path is almost like comparing Michael Jordan to Serena Williams. So once you realize non-duality or have an anatta realization, losing a center or just having no locality, whatever, actually that's just the starting condition for the rest of your life, right? You can become a CEO or you can make art, which I kind of like doing both. I'm not a CEO, I'm a founder of my company, but I'm just continue to make art, or you can continue the spiritual journey in
Mm.
many different
With
ways.
rocket
Yeah, yeah,
fuel
yeah,
behind you and no
yeah.
chains dragging you into all kinds of unconscious nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You cut through a lot of spiritual bullshit right away when because those kind of practice can, I guess, if you don't have initial emptiness realization, people can really cling on to special experiences or special states, or even powers and cities. Their self view will kind of contract, to interpret these experiences, to make them mine, to make me feel special, or to give some kind of inherent meaning or substantiality to these kind of experiences. But once you see through the lack of inherent existence in all phenomena, and then you practice through that lens of realizing nothing has inherent existence, then your practice progress can go a lot faster because you don't have to cut through a lot of bullshit.
Well,
So
when
that's why the
God's
God.
at the wheel, when God's at the wheel versus the devil at the wheel.
Yeah, I guess you can say it like that.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
I
can
don't
say you
know.
go beyond even God and devil duality.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I just wanted to say one
yeah,
more thing, and I think you got a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah.
I'm really like hooked on to when when you briefly mention extraordinary things like mind reading and stuff. We got to double back to that realm. We
Mm.
talked to a lady today that talked about after her transfer at the psychic fair. A lady talked about her transformation. She was like, what did she say? A soap bottle flew up and hit the ceiling. Like she was
Yeah.
so energetically charged. And for most of us, we're gonna have a part, at least a corner of our mind that's like doesn't believe it, even if there's a chunk of us that wants to believe it or does believe it.
Mm.
I'm utterly mystified. Do you know who Neem Karoli Baba is? You ever heard
I've
that
heard of him.
name?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, but I don't know too much
I'm
about him. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard.
because he was so little of, he didn't want to be recorded. The people would flock to go see him in India, and he kind of was one of these secretive guys. He wouldn't even take credit for some of the miracles he did, and the stories are outlandish.
Outrageous, right? Yeah.
They'd be like he could
They
be in
say you can move
multiple.
trains and stuff, right? I think
He
that's
could
the
move
damn thing.
trains. He
Yeah.
could be in multiple places at once. All this stuff, correct? Or and so I was like watching the footage of him because people would say that I started off with just a picture of him, and then he like visited me in a dream, and I went to visit him, and he was like knew that I was looking at a picture of him, and so. But at the same time, he seems to have something that most of us don't have, which is like a real childlike nature.
Mm.
Even from his movements, because a lot of the footage of him is silent,
Mm.
or like you can't hear him talking. Apparently, he said "ram ram ram" all the time. He seems so child like what most people would inherit, like off the cuff pity or something, but nevertheless you can't even capture on video what the reports of Ram Dass was a student of his.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, this guy was it, man. He was it. We would have like traveled across the world just to be near him, just to touch his garments and stuff like that. So that realm is really interesting to me, especially as somebody who sees the inherent value in like awakening, like getting that ego out of the pain body, out of the realm of constant torment. Awakening, that's great. That's enough just to make life a lot better for you. Um, but it is hella fascinating, the supernatural and miracles and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
I don't know where we go from that. I know you wanted to say something. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit more. What's up with it?
Um,
Should people pursue this?
yeah, yeah, like I said, I think the initial realization of non-duality, emptiness, or anatta realization is really important because, like, without the initial realization, the ego can definitely hijack some of these experiences and then distort them. Yeah. So, but once you see through the lack of inherency in all phenomenons, there's no more supernatural because the distinction between the natural and the supernatural, the mundane and the divine, all collapse.
Okay, that's where you're at.
That's what I'm at. Yeah. It's like you have to go through chasms of what I call ontological shocks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like we
okay.
think this is the conventional reality. You can actually have an anatta realization or a non-realization where there's no more sense of there can be still be a sense of self, right? But then you just see through that sense of self as being empty. Actually, you go beyond even the duality between self and no self.
So that leads actually perfectly into the question that I did want to talk about, because there's kind of like this neo Advaita and the traditional Advaita, where in the traditional it looks like there's more of like a lot of the non-dual teachings are there and everything, but there's also this element of like integrating back into life. It feels like there's kind of a balance there, where on the neo Advaita it seems to have a heavy emphasis on the awakening
Yep.
teaching, self-realization, all this stuff. And with the shock that you're talking about there, is there any like danger? Is there something to be said for the fact that in some traditions this stuff was purposely kept secret? Like to like, we're not going to let this information. Now we're living in the age of technology where all this stuff is out there. I can go, the craziest things that people are talking about, I can go just consume it if I want.
Yeah.
Is there any like, how should this be approached?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why some of those esoteric teachings are quote unquote hidden, there are many reasons. What you described is one of them. Another reason is just the people that have these insights or these realizations, they just don't care to talk about it. They're not trying to commoditize it. We live in a culture where everything's commoditized, right? Even something like anatta realization, like not self-realization, emptiness realization. Well, what is emptiness? Emptiness, it's can be described as a non-affirmative negation. It's something that gets revealed. Even the word something is like really weird here because it's not a thing. It's what gets revealed when you invalidate everything, including the process of invalidation itself. You negate everything, including the process of negation itself. And whatever is revealed, I guess the only word to describe it conventionally is suchness, right? Awareness without reference point. Primordial sentience. Yeah, I'm just
Isness.
yeah, isness. Sure, yeah. There's a lot of words to describe it, right? But then at the same time, there's no words to touch it, right? But where I was going with this is that realization is considered to be like the holy grail or the end of the path in most teachings in the modern spiritual marketplace. But then what happens is that because our civilization, our modern society commoditizes everything, they even commoditize a realization. So a lot of people look at anatta realization, emptiness realization, which is not a thing, as something to be obtained. That is already the wrong starting condition. That's actually the same starting condition that started the search, right? So that meaning making system is what made you stuck in this cash to loop of like chasing after this thing, chasing after this thing. And then no matter how much spiritual experiences you have, no matter how much insight you have, no matter how spacious you get, how many jhanas you have, how many retreats you've done, if you don't see through to that particular ontological structure, everything is still coming from that structure, right? Well, one of my favorite analogy is a snake that's eating its own tail. So we're just like a snake that's eating its own tail, our own karma, our own conditioning, and we spit it out, and then we construct a bigger box, a more luminous container, or even a non-dual container.
The
We,
Ouroboros. That's what that symbol's
yeah,
called.
exactly. Yeah, but then we're just kind of like chasing our own tails.
It's like impossible to explain why it's good. It's like, can't you see you're conscious? Just set aside all your thoughts, all your opinions of things and stuff like are you ising right now? Are you is? And then they're like, what is the use of knowing that? Like, so what is this is? It's like nothing. It's not even anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to talk about maybe where I'm at in a sec. But so thus far, it's been very difficult to say like, just shut the fuck up and utter silence until there's nothing and be it, just be it. And then it's like, to the typical mind, it can't do that. And I think that's often because of sometimes you got to do some maybe deep rooted unconscious stuff, deep rooted shadow stuff, all kinds of stuff still in the way. It's like you got to leave no excuse for the ego to hang on to sometimes, and then sometimes it's otherwise and it's spontaneous. Where I'm at, you mentioned something interesting in one of your videos, and it was like a 3-stage thing. And you said a lot of people end up at the witnessing stage, and I'm kind of
That's a really good entry point.
I'm kind of speculative that I might be confusing an awakening or some awakening experiences I've had with getting to that kind of deep witnessing point where it's like really, I call it the volume on the ego is turned down. You're definitely not in the monkey mind anymore. And there's spaces between thoughts where it really seems like you're kind of just being. But I've mentioned to other spiritual teachers such as yourself, who I trust their opinion and everything about this. How do you get that gestalt to, oh, I 100% experientially like am Lamp and am James and am Frank. I'm that without a doubt. To me, it's still, I see the profound freedom in consciousness aware of consciousness, like separated from ego, not in a disassociative way. That's not in a traumatic way where you like the mind fractures and you're disassociating. Like you're well aware of everything that is there. You're conscious of the pain in your foot, but it's impossible to explain why it's better from a place without an ego teleprompting a story about it. It's very hard to explain what's good about that. But nevertheless, I still suspect myself as being in the realm of the witnesser. And for those that are like me that are watching us, or anybody else that might be useful to, could you explain what happens next, where the gestalt leads to where you're at comes in?
Yeah. So actually, this ties in back to what I was saying before about how if you don't see through this view, this self view, um, every spiritual experiences that you're gonna have, even the witness stage, is still coming from this view because affliction exists in neutral, positive, and negative states. When I say affliction, what I mean is split in consciousness. So even in a state of equanimity or peace or a space of no thoughts, there can still be afflictions because you're still coming from an observer, even if that observer feels like an ultimate observer. It's almost like the observer's effect, right? When you try to measure a particle, you're already distorting it because the process of measuring the particle or the instrument that's used, or even the eye that is the consciousness that's observing the particle distorts it. So that's what I'm talking about as being like the observer and the observed. They're still within the same ontological structure. So it's like scientists use matter to measure matter and to create more matter, but it's still within the same container.
It's still dual.
Yeah, it's still dual. Exactly the same as the way that we perceive reality from the perspective of an observer, then it's still split. It's still coming from the self view, right? So from this self view, that was one of the examples I gave earlier, is that because of our most of the infrastructure in modernity is built from this view, then we sort of filter even awakening. The entire paradigm of spirituality is still from this self view. Because as a society, we all just need self views. Like there's nothing wrong with the self view intrinsically. It's just that as a society, as a modern society, everybody needs separate self view in order to survive and feel safe. Yeah.
To communicate, to talk, to not be like a catatonic.
Yeah, exactly. Now we all need individualization is really important, right? It's not to destroy the self view, it's to see through the self view. So like if you market a realization from that self view, then realization becomes the thing that you chase after, almost like a spiritual trophy or like the latest shiny gadget, like the latest iPhone. Like people, exactly how people on the internet are treating non-dual realization or nata realization, which I say it's a non-affirmative negation, but then we verify that into just another view when the realization is to invalidate and see through all views.
Depending on where you're at, it's the most frustrating thing in the world when somebody's like I'll be doing a guided meditation and it's not frustrating to me. I like it, but I know where it can be at. But it could be frustrating to hear somebody be like, don't even try to have a spiritual experience. Like you're not going to collect anything from this. You will actually not get anything of it. This is bad for you. You're like, wait a sec, what the, you know what I mean? Like it's going so far. Like it doesn't say this bad for you, but it's like, this will do nothing. Get out of the realm of this doing something for you. And from the ego, it can't understand what's of value about it. Then why would I do it? It's like, well, go take the spiritual path then that leads you to first realize how much suffering you're actually in. If you don't realize that there's already a problem, then it could not make sense to you. So like in that sense, I would give people my blood, like do whatever you want. I'm not going to harp on you about awakening or consciousness work, if you're like your narrative is good, I think for a lot of people that go down this path, they feel like something's wrong, like almost like Neo in the Matrix or something like that. Like something's off, something doesn't feel right, something feels like suffering here. And then one thing that you mentioned was the deep shadow work that you eventually end up doing can be like very intense for some people. Like almost it needs a warning sometimes. I've said to James before that I wonder with some people if enlightenment work almost becomes like an exorcism. Like your survival ego is so strong that if we try to extract this out of you, it's gonna like take an eyeball with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I will kill the host, not
Yeah,
to die.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another way to describe an ontological shock, right?
Because
Or
going into it for me, I'm like, I don't care if I die. I don't care if I go crazy. I don't care what happens. I'm ready. I just want consciousness. Because
yeah.
I see the torment that the ego causes, even with its good stories. Oh, everything's going to be wonderful. I'm going to be right. It's a nightmare in waiting. Yeah. So I'm not interested in having any stories. It's like, take the wheel, Jesus. I don't care. You know what I mean? That's why I said earlier, better to have God at the wheel and not Justin. You know what I mean? Not Justin and his machinations. You know, I'm okay with consciousness being the primary source, choosing what should go on here. But I don't know. That was a crazy rant. I don't know if
we
you
were
can
talking about
go
we were
off
talking
that.
to like we were talking a bit about this kind of before we even got into this interview. So should someone, like, does it matter whether or not people choose non-duality or choose consciousness? Does it matter at the end of the day? Or is it something that comes within you that that that's the right path for you, that that's something you're going to pursue? Is it something that should be proselytized, like, go chase higher consciousness? You should go chase non-duality or
Yeah, it depends on what you want. Yeah, some people just like having spiritual experiences and higher levels of consciousness. I mean, that can be a byproduct of realization, but like you said, it can also get in the way. So if you want a realization, you have to see through even consciousness, so to speak. That's what the seeing through the witness comes in, right? It's like at first you identify with the ego, and then you realize there's this broader, vast, spacious awareness. So you kind of transfer your identification from the ego to the witness or to awareness. But then
My wife isn't interested in this. Sorry, I'll go. I'll let you finish. I'm just excited to say something.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say my wife is not interested in this stuff, and some of the profound shifts I've had, I didn't bother to tell her because I know she's not interested in. Like, I'm not gonna be like, hey, guess what? I just had like a satori or something like that. Like, I don't do that. And like you said earlier, some of these guys, they have an awakening and they don't say anything. They go off and become a CEO maybe or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Not everybody has to proselytize. And then for some reason, I think about this old preacher, Smith Wigglesworth. There's a famous story where he was on a train and a guy was like, he was just sitting there like reading or something. And some guy was like, all of a sudden felt convicted in his presence. Like his internal demons couldn't handle the holiness that this Smith Wigglesworth guy, who was a Christian, by the way, was radiating. So I think that you got to be careful sometimes of the idea that someone's proselytizing. Sometimes you proselytize by your very existence, by your being. Be like, what's with you? What is this like? You're kind of weirding me out, the fact that I can sense how much you love me. I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? Is it not possible for, depending on who's doing the perceiving, to perceive things that way?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's why I could say you can't really. That's what I meant by people have different views, right? Or different meaning making systems. So once you introduce something that isn't within their own paradigm, and they can either reject it or be open-minded to it, because there's a chasm that you need to cross, right? Because what the ego is, it's just a collection of meaning making systems, right? There's no such thing as the ego, really, right? It's just an ontological structure, right? So
Software.
yeah, it's a software, right? So at first, the software is contracted to just like, the separate itself, the entity, right? But then you kind of see through that, and then immediately your mind verified awareness or consciousness. That becomes a new software, right? So you cross one chasm, and then you find yourself in a bigger chasm. But then you have to self-invalidate everything, right? So you have to even disidentify or de-reify even the identification to like consciousness, and then There's not much to say beyond that, but
As people are going through the steps and they're having those maybe mini panic attacks or those
mm,
things,
yeah.
what would you suggest for those people to kind of like help them get through some of that, like to build maybe some courage as they're going through that?
I think like having support of maybe a teacher or some guy is important,
Mm.
but I didn't have a teacher until pretty recently. But before I kind of just went through that myself, and there were many moments where I was just in my bed for like 2 weeks and just felt like I was gonna die, like many times. And then I don't know, I just somehow maybe I had some drinks or whatever, try to ease up the suffering a little bit. But at some point, there's nothing that you can do other than surrender, and you surrender to even surrendering. So like there's not much you can do because anything that you try to do in that moment, those moments, will just create more resistance. So you just gotta have trust, I think, a trust to fall into the unknown. Because like it's all about being comfortable with the unknown, right? Once you cross over to a chasm, you're crossing over from the known to the unknown, right? What's beyond the ego is the unknown, right? And then that unknown becomes the known, and you cross another chasm as you continue to go meta, and then you keep crossing over to the red horizon between the known and the unknown. And each time you make one of those transitions, you feel like a death, and you feel that there will be like panic attacks of, uh, existential fears when you break through these ontological structures, so to speak. Yeah.
You wear all black for like a month. I want to talk about Artem. You know who Artem is? I think
Yeah,
you've
yeah, yeah,
interviewed
yeah,
him.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, I enjoy that guy. We interviewed him.
Oh yeah.
And we were trading stories about like, I've gone on my own little personal meditative retreats.
Mm.
Sometimes at inappropriate times, like at family cottage getaways, I'll just lock myself away. And I was like, going through some of my stuff, like all those intrusive thoughts that you push away and you push away, and just like kind of allowing them to happen and spelunking into your own mind, like to the depths of hell of your being. I was like, I was doing kooky stuff, like
Mm.
rolling around and sweating, torment to work all that buried, suppressed stuff out. And he
Yeah.
was like concurring with it. He was like, "Oh yeah, I cried for like months." He was saying, or something like that. And now that we're in the realm of Artem, first I want to put that just anecdotal story about what you're saying. The peculiar ways that working this stuff out can work.
Yeah.
He concurred, and then him as a teacher or as a spiritual speaker, I find him entertaining. He's got an odd approach. I saw him do a panel one time where he like all out said to some other guy like, "You're not enlightened." And it
Yeah, yeah,
turned
I know.
into
I remember. I know his style. Yeah, sure.
and
Yeah.
it turned into and so what do you think of that approach? Because so many guys are like, I also really like Angelo DeLulio, and he seems so supportive, and there's all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork that claim to have enlightenment experiences, and he takes them at face value and he talks about it from that place.
Yeah.
This is talk about contrast. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of Artem being like, you don't know shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I wouldn't want.
there's plenty of people doing that already.
I like the idea of being like more of a gentle person as I go along. For people coming up there are where I started. You know what I mean? If they are, if
Hmm.
somebody happened to be interested in what I was saying, I like the idea of being more in the peaceful kind of like Adyashanti realm. I like that, but I also enjoy that Artem approach. What do you think of that?
I think people just have different tastes, right? Different people have different personalities, and people on the journey have different tastes for different kind of teachings in particular phases of their journey, of their path. So, maybe in this journey you need a little bit of Adyashanti, but then when you get to like non-dual, whatever, you need a bit of Artem, whatever. Yeah. So just different teas, right? Different cups of teas. Yeah.
Yeah. You've been doing this thing for a long time. We haven't really talked about kind of like the beginnings. How, obviously a lot has changed, but maybe you could tell us something about your story that you haven't maybe already shared on YouTube. I know a lot of views out there already, but maybe you could talk a little bit about your journey from the beginning point and, how you got to where
You
you are
mean
right
by
now.
spiritual journey or?
Well, yeah, from fitness, because I know a lot of your early stuff was a lot of fitness stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then this is kind of like, it seems like it's kind of taken over now, the
Yep.
spirituality aspect. Maybe you could talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
I started out as a violinist and almost majored in I did major in violin, but then I almost became a professional violinist. So I've been playing the violin since I was like 5. But then somewhere during like the last year of my senior year in high school, I started getting into weightlifting. So I'm known as a guy who plays the violin and lift weights. That went on for a while, and then I discovered philosophy. From philosophy, I started to experiment with a little bit of psychedelics after I discovered Alan Watts, Thomas Oxley. And, a few years after I experimented with psychedelics, I started getting into meditation to try to like see if I can access these states naturally. So I started doing meditation. Started with TM and then went to Vipassana retreats. I did three Goenka retreats. And after that, I just, I guess you could say I reached the edge of the what I consider the pragmatic dharma circle or just non-duality stuff on the internet. There's just not much that that was new for me anymore. So I was just still practicing on my own. After I had the anatta realization, which the one I uploaded on the internet. Um, so basically, my entire story is just kind of stopped there, so to speak. Yeah, yeah. But then after that, it's been 5 years after that, and I just continue to develop. And it wasn't until the last year that I started to really have carved out a new path, so to speak, in order to develop further. And that's what, loops back to the beginning of the conversation about how actually, you can continue to develop. And from the Vajrayana perspective, or Dzogchen's perspective, actually, they started with emptiness, the nature of mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can talk about the Bhumis too, from the Mahayana or the Mahayana tradition. The training of a bodhisattva, the way they model the development of a spiritual athletes is through this thing called the Bhumis. There's 1 to 10 Bhumis. And the first Bhumi would be something like anatta, no self-realization. So there's 10 more Bhumis after what most people consider to be the end of the path. Yeah.
Oh. For the people that are new getting into this,
Yeah.
do you have any recommendations and like a good place to start? Say you're new to spirituality, non-duality, you're the very beginning, and
Very beginning?
you trip across this video, and you're like, "Ooh, something sounds fascinating here. I want a taste of that."
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
do you
I'll
start?
probably recommend something like Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, or maybe Sam Harris's Waking Up app and book. And Adia Shanti has some really good books that would be pretty beneficial to you if you're a beginner or intermediate athlete or advanced spiritual athlete. Yeah, it'll be applicable to you.
Power Now is so. The first time I read it, I didn't know what the heck
Power
was
of Now.
going on. I read it way before my proper time, and then
Yeah,
years later, like I didn't read it. I have it on audiobook.
yeah.
But then years later, I listened to it and I was like, oh, okay, I actually get some of this stuff now. When I first started, I didn't know what the heck he was talking about.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I had my first like Dark Night of the Soul experience while reading that book. Yeah. Then he was like, You're not the body, you're not the mind." I was like super identified with my body as a bodybuilder and my mind as an artist, as a musician, just as a creative person. And then when I read that, and then it really threw me off course. I was like, "Man, what am I?"
so
That's a
maybe
lot of
this.
people's entry to spirituality, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like
That's
it's
common, man.
widespread. Like a lot of people really
Yeah.
love that book, man.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a little taboo, but I feel like just as like a launching pad to project us whatever little bit further we got. Are you enlightened? Are you an enlightened being? Whatever
Uh,
that means.
it's going to be very difficult to answer that question because
I
once you
know.
say you're enlightened, then it's like who is there to be enlightened?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then it's like if I say I'm not enlightened, I feel like that doesn't seem honest. So both sides, neither existence or non-existence. Yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna take that as you answered it,
yeah.
and so
It also has to depend a lot on which context you're asking that from, because there's a lot of traditions. If you have a Kundalini awakening, you're enlightened. But from another model, Kundalini awakening is not even the first level of awakening. And from the primary Dharma circle, the full enlightenment is actually just stream entry. For if you map that more modernized version of the sutra onto the original sutra, what's considered arhatship is only stream entry. So the whole notion of enlightenment doesn't even compute to me right now. Yeah, yeah.
what role does pain play in your life from your
Pain,
perspective?
pain,
Pain.
pain is pain.
Like, well, I mean, for some people, it's a significant factor. Like for some people, it's their whole life. Like if maybe there's some kind of a drug addict or something like that,
Okay.
and they're
Um,
constantly running from pain,
oh,
like many
oh,
of
okay. Oh,
us.
just in general, pain. I think pain is just the other side of pleasure. I think both pleasure and pain are two sides of the same coin, actually. Yeah,
Would
yeah.
you move like? Okay, that's fine for an
Yeah,
answer.
it's like you can't really talk about pain without pleasure, right? People think pain is the opposite of pleasure, so they would try to escape pain by just indulging themselves in a lot of
Drown out the pain with the
oh,
pleasure.
nutrients. Yeah, 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 yeah. But they're actually two sides of the same. You actually can see that people when they have sex, when they have an orgasm, their face is actually extremely painful, but they're also in bliss. Yeah, there's a
That's a
certain
good point.
kind of contraction in bliss as well. That like I said, affliction exists in positive, negative, and neutral states. So.
I've noticed my perspective on pain can change in moments depending on how deep I'm going into a meditation. Like I'll be annoyed by some contraction in my body or pain in my body, and then if my ego just leaves the room for a minute, all of a sudden it's like I could like it's not a problem at all. It's even sort of fascinating. It doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
not what it once was when I was resisting it a moment ago.
yeah.
So I was curious from someone such as yourself, which I'm assuming like identifies with everything, what your answer would be. And yeah, the contrast of pleasure, I suppose.
No, yeah, yeah. But I'll say in general, if you want to talk about it, the direct experience of pain, I haven't really had a lot of injuries for the last few years. But from what I can observe, for the way I observe how my body feels when I'm lifting weights, just pushing through that pain barrier, I'll say like that your pain threshold, your ability to endure pain definitely increases
Yeah.
exponentially.
Without like a bad coach, whispering and yelling horrible things into your ear, which is the ego,
Yeah.
you can endure a whole lot more because you're like my body's got this. It knows it's all right. You don't have to say that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The mind actually, the brain actually spends an enormous amount of resource on just maintaining illusions. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Why am I doing this? I'm doing this
yeah.
because it's gonna be awesome for me. This investment will pay dividends. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't shut up. Um, what is your favorite thing to talk about? Do you love talking about?
What do I love talking? I love talking about this. Yeah, whatever rises. I actually don't mind talking about anything. Yeah, I can
I
talk
was
about.
just gonna ask you. I
Awesome.
was gonna ask you, what do you do with your free time? Do you do you ever just get tired? Because I know, like sometimes you have the thing that you
Sure, you can
do.
get tired. Yeah.
You're on YouTube. Like, do you like to sit down and watch Netflix, go to the movies, play video games? Do you still do those things?
I watch a lot of not a lot, but I do watch Netflix shows or shows on HBO Max, whatever. It's I think it's interesting. Yeah,
I binge watched all
I
the
enjoy
Black Mirror.
watching. Yeah, the Black Mirror, the new season is
Yeah.
really good. I enjoy Black Mirror a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I watched the whole thing like an addict, and then when I was done, I was just like it wasn't so dark. I feel like in the past Black Mirrors, when it's done, I'm like, I feel dirty, but this latest season wasn't too bad. In fact, there was even maybe some good stuff. I don't know, but maybe not very much.
Yeah, Black
And
Mirror.
what about ideas of the world right now, from kind of like a looking out now, maybe into what's going on across the globe? Do you have any perspectives or thoughts about, you're from America, right? So us being your neighbors up here, we have an election coming up on Monday. There's stuff going on in India and Pakistan right now. I don't know how much you even follow the news.
Yeah, I don't follow the news too much actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't
This
follow the
I'm
news.
that's me. I'm follow too much news. I guess is my problem. But I'm always curious about like how you see the world and the progress and evolution where we're going. Do you have any ideas and thoughts about that?
I think the world is perfect the way it is, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do to make it better. From one perspective, it seems like it's extremely fucked up. Seems like we're in a very degenerative phase, but at the same time, technology is a double-edged sword, right? I think I think we're in a pretty critical time period in terms of like transformation wise. It's like we have all the knowledge at the tip of our finger, at the tip of our fingers.
Yeah.
It depends on how you use it, right? We have all the tools to awaken.
Yeah.
But then at the same time,
And
we have
maybe
just as much
maybe
distraction.
AI will be a thing
Yeah,
that comes
exactly.
that helps us
Yeah, I do
get
think like
there.
pretty soon we're going to go through a phase where the entire globe is going to undergo an ontological shock, some kind of unveiling of the collective consciousness, and it's starting to happen already. Like I said in maybe before we started recording, how I was looking at my Instagram and that AI just every 3 months increases in its realism exponentially. Yeah.
Ontological shock. Don't know what that word means.
It means like a paradigm shift. It's like when Neo realizes he was not who he thought he was, that he was living in a matrix, that is a major ontological shock. Or when you realize that you're not just the self, your identity is not wrapped around in just Frank, that you have an ontological shock. Yeah.
I always suggest this book that I read years ago, or read, whatever I did, called Our Inner Ape. And I'm always like, there's a lot of people that I feel like if I am going to proselytize, like read Our Inner Ape. Because a lot of people seem to, when you say ontological shock, what stirs in me, like of this collective unconscious or something like that, is like, we can fix things, but first we need to know what the hell is warts and all going on here. Like, and I'm hyperbolic and I do things really dramatically. I'm like, a lot of people aren't aware that in them there's like a gorilla with a machine gun that just wants to be on top. Like, I have all the resources, I own everyone. Like a lot of people don't want to, like, in stark terms be like, I want everything, including your stuff. I want to win. And I know people that seem to genuinely like not have that. They're like, they don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not that way. I'm a community person. But I think the collective unconscious has a rude awakening where they got like, I don't know if it needs to be a confrontation or a gentle understanding, but like, we are animals. We do eat and defecate and screw and all this stuff. Like, we have to reconcile this part of ourselves, or how are we going to move forward? We're like going to be blindly and unconsciously self-destructive for a long time.
Yeah, I think we're going to go through phases like that. Yeah. Just like a spiritual journey, in order for your consciousness to continue to upgrade itself, you need to go through periods of darkening of the soul, periods of dissolution, right? Recognition. Yeah, contraction, expansion, codependent rise. So like COVID is kind of like a collective darkening of the soul. And after COVID, a lot of people started to get into spirituality. Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like the whole spirituality scene is kind of like pretty muddy right now. Like you said, there's so many different kind of informations out there. This person says this, that person says that. This awakening is better than that awakening. I have a better truth than your truth. There's so many different views, right? So that's just the process of evolution. It's just like weightlifting too, right? Your muscles need to be torn apart before you can grow new tissues, and then you get stronger and you continue to tear down your muscle tissues, and you get stronger. So as a collective, we will continue to go through these things, and I do think we're undergoing a pretty drastic transformation because of AI. And even some of the UFO sightings. And like, imagine like if we really make contact with the aliens, that would be probably the biggest ontological shock as a globe, right? Our entire sense of meaning-making system will just break down. When you take psychedelics, why do people experience, existential fears or even bliss during the psychedelic trips, right? Because the veil of their consciousness has been lifted, right? Their sense of meaning-making system has been disrupted or even dissolved. And they go through ontological shock. Ontological shock could be manifested as bliss or fear.
Well, the world might need. I don't even know what you would call these people, but spiritual healers or helpers to help people through these shocks, right? I think we need more people. Maybe one of the reasons that like delays some of the stuff that we're talking about here is the fact that there's so much fear, and it's like, well, if I fall apart, who do I go to? That's like, I need some time. I need some time to like recover.
Fear. Yeah, that's a legit fear. Interesting that you said that, because even after a non-dual awakening, people can still experience disorientations, and ability to function. Some people even go to therapy after they have an anatta realization, and that ties it back into the things I was saying in the beginning. It's like there's not a lot of material after a realization. Like 99% of the teachings out there in the spiritual marketplace, it's about awakening, right? But what if you really do attain that awakening? What do you do after that? Like, there's not a lot of materials out there.
I've heard people talk about that too, like like people that are sort of lopsided, like people that have even had like a deep awakening, if there's a capacity to be deep, but they're like their personal life, or they're like they're underdeveloped, they're immature in the way they relate to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
That can for sure happen.
There's almost no one you can go to in these kind of situations out there.
But a therapist might be a good option, like for somebody that's like trying to uncover childhood trauma or just work through social anxiety or something like that,
Sure.
I think it can, like something like a therapist or a doctor or a trainer,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
for physical fitness, anything. It's still the
But
same rules apply.
does it get diagnosed as dissociation and then you're trained to be pulled back into your ego after? Like,
You could be there. There could be a period of integration or many periods of integration. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But even the word integration, like the word enlightenment, doesn't really compute in my mental landscape right now because what are you trying to integrate, right? There's never a distinction between what needs to be integrated
Yeah.
and what hasn't been integrated.
I was going to
Maybe
ask you
that
what
split.
integration is.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I
Because
mean,
you
I'll just
mentioned it before, and I
yeah,
was
yeah, I
like,
did mention it before. Yeah, but then from a more conventional linear causality kind of perspective, integration just means that when you have a spiritual opening, it doesn't have to be like a full realization, whatever that means. It could just be maybe even a ayahuasca experience, a kind of an opening of right when you the veil of your consciousness has been lifted to some degree, and then you need a period of time in order to integrate that experience so you can bring every aspect of your life or attempt to that's the ideally you want to bring every single aspect of your life or of your psyche and then align it with that realization and that's the process of integration. Yeah.
so where is the Frank Yang YouTube channel headed to next?
I'm not sure. I'm actually editing a podcast right now that I did like a year ago. So I actually pretty much almost done editing. I started editing it like 6 months ago. So I'm just like here and there. I edit this video, that video, and it depends on how I feel about it. I put it out. So right now it's this podcast that I did about a year ago, and
You're
then
a busy guy. You're a
I don't
busy
know
guy.
I don't know what I'm gonna do next now. Yeah, I have another boot camp coming up in May. So we get in our new cohorts right now. So I'm in the process of doing that. Yeah.
do you like teaching? Do you like
Do I
teaching
like
people this
teaching?
stuff?
I don't mind teaching. Yeah, I don't mind teaching. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I don't love it or hate it. Yeah, that's how I feel about most things. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. You know, it's fun. Like, just one more thing I wanted to say about like people that have awakened that have more work to do. Seems like it's everybody, but
Right, yeah. It seems like it's everybody exactly.
I kind of liked when I would hear about like a teacher who, you know, you run you run the risk of being tempted to think that they're infallible or something like that, and then you would
Yeah.
find out that they had a drinking problem like Alan Watts or something, or that they smoked, or that
Yeah.
they had some chronic pain that they couldn't
Like
heal.
Adi
Or
Shanti, right?
yeah, but you know, some of these people like they lay hands on people or something. They've got such
Oh,
influence that you hear stories of,
yeah.
but nevertheless, you hear about the master himself having some infirmity or some character defect, and I got to admit I've taken comfort in that to some degree because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. We're still human, right? Yeah, we
it's
still got to
like a
keep.
blessing. It's like don't get wrapped up in that crap. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? I don't know. There's something about it I like.
yeah.
I
That's a really
suppose I
good point.
can't explain why, but
That's a really good point. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like kind of like the humanity still
The
remains.
humanity still remains, and it keeps it within the realm of like not giving way to delusion. Like you got to delude yourself, I think, a little bit to start actively believing that Adi Ashanti is. It
Like
would
a
not be
perfect being.
possible for him to be in pain. Like Osho, you look into his personal life, and it's like he dictated. I
Pretty
think
wicked.
three.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Yo, Osho is pretty wicked. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love
Yeah,
Osho. I
actually,
really like
you know,
Osho.
if you look at it this way, like, what is a realization? Like, realizing the nature of mind just means that you become the entire spectrum of what it means to be human, right? So
Yeah.
you can be the God consciousness, the ego mind, and everything else between. The animalistic side of you can still be there, but there's just no preference even between these states. Yeah, this is
Stub your toe and punch a wall.
sure. I mean, but the thing is, a lot of people can actually spiritual bypass with these kind of views. Yeah, yeah, sure. Like ultimately speaking, you can punch a person in the face even after not self-realization, right? Sure, maybe when the occasion arises. Right? There's like no ultimate right or wrong way to do things, right? But then you just naturally have this flow of compassion that you're just not going to do that. But that just because you see somebody punch someone else in the face, it doesn't mean that they don't have a realization. You know what I mean? It's like
Yep.
it depends
Yep.
on it depends on whatever arises due to the right causes and conditioning, right? So, um, what were we talking
I
about?
wanted to make one tiny distinction, and then I'll let James
Oh, no,
close
wait,
it
wait.
out.
I was gonna say people can really spiritual bypass. You know, they're like,
Yes.
oh yeah, you can just there's nothing to do, everything is spontaneous, I can do whatever I
Yes.
want. But that's just a view too. You know, if you really believe that view, your realization is not completed. I guess the better way to put it is that your view is not refined. So you're still
Yeah.
holding on to the view that, oh, this is how awakening should be like. Like
And
awakening itself can become its own view. And you see that happening in the spiritual marketplace. I'm not saying these teachers aren't awakened, but it's like if they don't continue to develop, continue to refine their view, the view of no view, the ultimate liberating view, then it's very easy for the rest of the conditioning to cling on to realization and turn that into a view. Even after a realization, you can say the whole entire journey is all about refining the view, right? All you have is the view, the ultimate view of quote unquote no view. But it's really easy to verify that no view into another view. You can even verify emptiness into another thing, right? That's why I said about I'm not talking about seeing people like make that into a thing, right? So even after realization, you still need to continue to refine the very subtle layers of the mind that is still trying to verify this ultimate view into some kind of identity, whether that's, oh, everything is spontaneous, that I can just do whatever I want in spiritual bypass, or oh, I have to continue to dissolve the rest of my conditioning. Even that's a view, right? So if you hold the view that I have to completely dissolve all my conditioning and every speck of my ego, then you're gonna go into this endless cycle of catch 22 that I was talking about. Because everything you do is still coming from that view. You cannot solve a problem using the same conditioning that you're using to find a solution with. Because
yeah.
the solution that you come up with is still going to be confined to that particular view, right? So the question and the answer are both still coming from the same ontological structure or the same meaning making. That's what
And
I mean.
we're in an
Yeah. So
utterly
you can never out dissolve reality, right? So you're just going to continue to
yeah, yeah,
rest of your
and we're
life trying to dissolve more
and in this
conditioning.
reality, there's
Yeah.
endless polarization and like there's like some paradoxical stuff, but there's a lot of polarization, and so you're kind of a sitting duck if you are doing that spiritual bypassing, and
Yeah.
because what you're doing is you're kind of constructing beliefs, so you got to
Exactly.
you got to
Yeah.
insulate yourself from the world. But if you want to exist in this world, like in absolute truth, whatever the hell that means,
You have to
I
embrace everything.
you
Yeah.
have to embrace
Yeah.
everything. And so that's, I just wanted to say the last thing that I'm going to say was I wanted to make a distinction between awakening and disassociation. The
Oh,
idea of, in
mhm.
my interpretation of disassociation is I don't know if it's involuntary, but it's a result of I'm so traumatized that I'm numb or I'm disassociated from the problems of the world. Like you're not enlightened. Don't you know you should be offended, or don't you know you should care? It's like I'm not blocking anything out. I'm
Mhm.
fibrously, sensorially, completely aware of what you're talking about. I'm not running away from it. You're not going to pigeonhole me into something. You're not going to like checkmate me in something, because what am I even talking about? I haven't
Yeah.
said something that you're supposed to go die on some hill about. That's not what
Mhm.
I'm doing. I'm not trying to do. I'm trying to be fully into whatever integrated even means.
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
things like I don't know what words mean, so you can't get me.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the bypassing aspect of it, which, like you said, is endless construction. It's what is the absolute truth? What could it be? That's to me the fascinating question. The
Yeah.
truthiest of truths, the truth that is unperturbable,
Yeah.
undefeatable, doesn't even need to be defended because it's all prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I want to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, even the whole notion of truth gets self-invalidated at the end, right? It's almost like once you become reality,
Yeah.
once the mind completely syncs up to reality with this normal distinction between inside and outside, reality and mind, truth and untruth, enlightenment, non-enlightenment, all that duality gets destroyed. Yeah.
Wow. Brilliant. Well,
That's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Frank, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show
Yeah.
and being
Thank
with
you.
us.
You guys had a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Maybe the last thing we could do here is maybe you could let our audience know, if you have one, an overarching theme of what you're doing out there, and then maybe where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I like you say, I'm pretty busy. I work like maybe 10 hours a day. Yeah, it's just on editing. I still play Valley sometimes. I haven't played in a while, but that's something that I still do once in a while. I still lift weights, video editing, podcasts, and like the bootcamp thing takes me like 6 hours a day to complete that task on a daily basis. So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. And you can find me on my website at www.frankyang.wtf. That's frankyang.whatthefuckwtf. Or there's just links that you can put in the description in regards to my like Instagram page and my YouTube channel, youtube.com/frankyang. Yeah, you can just put the links if you guys want.
Yes, for sure.
That's
this was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.